Hello, hello. Welcome back to Mistress of the Damned. If you are new here, hello. Nice to meet you. This is the channel where we believe that all knowledge is worth having and freedom of speech is our most important right. If you believe that too, then you too are damned. And I am your Mistress Katrina. Welcome to hell. This week's book of the week is Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn's first novel, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. Now, this book entered my library as a result of Dr. Jordan Peterson. While I don't specifically remember which lecture it was, he recommended that if you don't have time to read Gulag Archipelago, you should read this book as an overview of what life was like in the Gulag system. Now, it turns out I do have time to read the Gulag Archipelago, but I thought I'd start with kind of the Cliff Notes version, aka this seminal work by a literary master. Now, nominally, this is a work of fiction. It was written by Solzhenitsyn after his own release from the gulags in 1953, after he served, I believe it was an 8-year sentence. But the power of his words was such that when this book was published, it was immediately accepted as an accurate portrayal of what life was like in the camps. And it was recognized as kind of the legacy of Stalinist Russia. And Solzhenitsyn was kind of elevated to the ranks of literary master for this storytelling. I have not so far reviewed any fiction books because fiction is so... it's very, very personal, right? You either like it or you don't. And people have their genres of fiction. Some people, all they read are romance novels, and some people all they read is science fiction, and for some people all they read is horror. So I've kind of been shying away from fiction because I like everything. I really do. I have all of the above on my shelves. But I kind of wanted to spend some time going over what socialism can wreak, because it is so not told here in the United States. What's told is how horrifying capitalism is, and they throw up socialism and or communism as a viable alternative, and it most definitely isn't. So let's go into this. Okay. So I don't want to go too far into a tangent there. Ivan Denisovich Zhukov is basically an everyman, and he could literally be anyone who is imprisoned in the Gulag system. We never actually get a clear idea of what he did. He is simply classified as a political prisoner whose sentence was earned for having dared to criticize the regime. And that's it. He was jailed for 10 years for speaking harshly against the regime. And that is not unlike Solzhenitsyn himself, who didn't actually speak against the regime. His sentence was the direct result of criticizing Stalin in a letter to a friend, while Solzhenitsyn was serving on the front lines during World War II. Unfortunately for him, this letter was read by the censors, and both he and his friend were swept up for anti-state thought and sent to the camps. That's a horrifying idea here in America, right? And here in America, we have the right to think and speak however we feel like, theoretically. So the thought that you could be jailed for simply writing a letter to a friend, and he wasn't even necessarily criticizing Stalin, he made a joke about Stalin, is my understanding, and that was enough to earn him a 10-year sentence. Stalin had no sense of humor. Anyways, back to Zhukov. This book starts, it's literally one day, all right? There are no chapter breaks, no gaps or anything. There's no pause here. It literally just, from the moment he opens his eyes in the morning till the moment he goes to bed at night, it follows every movement he makes, okay? So he starts his day when an alarm being sounded to wake up the barracks in which he and his fellow inmates are housed. The barracks sleeps about 200, his one barracks building, all right? There were literally thousands of people in this camp. His particular barracks had approximately 200 people in it. They slept in bunk beds that were stacked 4 high. And he has a little bit of time. I think he said he has about 90 minutes in the morning that are all his. So you wake up, you have about 90 minutes to start to orient yourself. Again, theoretically. In reality, once that alarm goes off, you're supposed to leap out of bed and start moving. Because he doesn't, he wakes up this particular day and he's kind of not feeling well. Maybe he's coming down with a cold. He lays there a little bit. So when one of the camp, it's not one of the guards, it's It's one of the inmates, but it's one of those ones who kind of had authority over the other ones. Walks in, sees him lounging there, and he loses some of his precious downtime because the leader directs him to go and mop the guardhouse because, he clearly has nothing better to be doing. He's just lounging in bed, so you go mop the guardhouse. And it's winter, so it's cold, and he's got his winter boots, so he goes out, he mops the guardhouse, has barely enough time to choke down some breakfast before he has to line up to go out to work. Now, the food sounds completely horrifying, all right? First off, there's never enough of it. Like, literally, with thousands of people, never enough. It's basically, the breakfast is basically boiled grass with half-rotted fish bones. And you chew on the fish bones, and you get every bit of protein you possibly can out of this. And you eat every bite of that boiled grass. And every bit of your 6 ounces of bread. Yeah. Lunch was actual oatmeal, which is apparently an absolute treat to get actual oatmeal, even though it was cooked without fat. 1.5 ounces per inmate. For those of you who just don't bother with measurements, that's less than a quarter cup of food per person. I mean, not even a quarter cup. Due to some quick sleight of hand, Zhukov manages to cadge an extra helping for himself, both at lunch, it's dinner in the book, but it's dinner and supper is how they're classified. So he gets an extra helping at lunch and an extra helping at dinner. So he gets a little extra food, and that makes it a good day. Right? That little extra food makes it a good day. All that food, that 1.5 ounces of oatmeal and the boiled grass at breakfast, is supposed to sustain full-grown men doing hard labor. And it is hard labor. I think it's telling that after the prisoner head count and their march across the tundra to wherever they're working, Zhukov's squad of 24 men counted themselves lucky that they were not sent to the Socialist Way work camp. Isn't that interesting? Instead, they were sent to continue building more administrative buildings, or administration buildings. Zhukov's squad is set the task of building up walls, but it's winter, mortar freezes really fast, so the building has to go fast. The lift to the second floor is broken, so all supplies must be carted up manually. Zhukov is a bricklayer. Camp doesn't have enough tools to go around, so that's okay, though. He's okay with that because months before, he identified a good trowel that he managed to keep from being counted in supplies, and so he hides it every day in camp, or at the work site. He hides it in a different location so that when he has to lay bricks, he'll have a good trowel. And this literally only lasts until his work site changes because he can't take it with him to a new location because they search the inmates. They search the inmates before they leave camp, the barracks camp. They search the inmates before they leave the work site to make sure that they're not hiding any contraband. Isn't that horrifying? It's interesting because he describes the whole day, and there's clearly things that you're like, oh, God, that's maybe not awesome. He cadges this extra bowl of food, and isn't that stealing from some of the other inmates? And, what would you do? I mean, you're starving, you're doing hard labor, you think that you wouldn't do everything you could to get extra food for yourself? I mean, you would. Anybody would. Because the human drive to survive is literally genetically part of us. Been part of us for, 50,000 years. I mean, ever since we started evolving from, whatever ape or monkey we all descended from, that survival trait is ingrained in us. And yeah, you'll do whatever you can to survive. But despite this, this thievery and the trickery and everything he has to do to survive, he's a man who takes pride in his work. I mean, he gets this rhythm going after he picks up his trowel and they get the mortar mixed. And despite being an inmate and this being forced labor, he uses just pure economy of motion to build up 5 rows of bricks on an administration building. And the entire book is just this study in humanity and one's willingness to survive. And he catches extra food. He's made some friends that just one can in a camp where snitches are everywhere, waiting to do whatever they can to get time knocked off their own sentence. So, I mean, everything is done by graft and favors. He holds somebody's place in line at the mail. depot. He's not expecting any mail himself. He told his wife years previously, don't send me anything, save everything for the children, feed our kids, I'll be fine. And so he's not expecting anything, but he goes and stands in line at the post office for somebody else. So that basically with the full expectation that having done this solid, the guy's going to give him some of the food that he's getting. And, he does. It works. And it's all about outsmarting the camps and the guards and the other inmates, making sure that you do the stealing, but nobody steals from you, and that you don't get caught for it, because if you get caught, you'll get put into solitary, and solitary in winter is basically just an ice block. It's an unheated cell, and they take all of your winter wrappings away from you. So essentially, if you don't die, you come out of it with a lifelong illness that never goes away. So, he does steal as needed, and there are people he dislikes because he's human, but he has that pride in his work, and he's studying the newly arrived, and he knows who will make it, and who will manage to adapt and survive to their term, and who won't. And at this book, he had served 8 years of a 10-year term, so he would know. This book was really sobering. This is the book they should teach in college, instead of that trash rag, the Communist Manifesto. Instead of teaching the high ideas of a man who literally never worked a day in his life, all right, that being Karl Marx, they should teach what those policies resulted in, which is forced labor and death. That's it for this week. If you liked what you saw, hit that subscribe button, share my videos, let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.